Welcome, goalies. Coach Devin Butts here from Goalrobber.hockey schools. Glad you could all make it today. I'm alongside Coach Nate Spidel. Going to take you through a couple of concepts that are cutting edge, starting out with the idea of keeping your head in the window. Coach, what can you tell us about this concept?
Yeah, hey guys, this is Coach Nate Spidel, aka Spider Pig, aka the Spidey. Um, yeah, and I'm excited to just talk to you guys about one of my favorite concepts. And I actually ran across this on YouTube several years ago. I don't know, it's like 3 or 4 years ago. And I was looking to try to find the video, the original video that I watched about keeping your head in the window or staying in the window, and I cannot find it. I'm just not sure where that's at. I was hoping to cite it and include it in the comments, but yeah, I can't find it anywhere. So if I'm able to, I will throw it in the description as well. But yeah, so this idea of keeping your head in the window is really, really important. And the reason why it's so important is because there is a really incredible connection between your eyes and your brain. Now, your eyes, as an organ or a part of your body, is one of the only things or only organs that has a neural connection to pretty much every region of your brain. So if you think about it, we take the most information in through our bodies, through our brain, or through our eyes, excuse me. So whatever you see, if you hear a sound somewhere, we always look first, right? So that tells us our body prioritizes vision above most other things. And so there's this really great connection between the eyes and the brain. Again, a lot of information comes in through the eyes. And as a goaltender, obviously, we're taking in a ton of information visually. So what we want to try to do, since the brain is not very good at multitasking, is decrease the cognitive load on our brain, which means, if we're trying to track a puck, we want to try to minimize the vertical displacement and the horizontal displacement as much as we can. Now, the horizontal displacement can be a little challenging to minimize because as a goalie, obviously the puck is moving laterally often. We want to move and stay on angle. However, where we have more control is minimizing the vertical displacement, which in an easy way to put it is minimize moving your head up and down or bobbing up and down. Now, most goalies understand that idea, but I want to give you a few examples and a few reasons to kind of convince you as to why we want to try to keep our head in a window. So the first thing I want to talk about is what I mean by a window. Now, the window is simply, I alluded to it in a couple of our other videos, but is simply trying to keep your head within maybe 1 to 1.5 feet of movement, of displacement up and down. So we're showing a couple of videos here. The first one is Lance Knutson of the University of Mary, and you notice he demonstrates a really nice execution of keeping his head within the window. There's a couple of dotted lines there. Now he's a tall goalie, like he's a 6'3" goalie or so, and in his stance, you'll notice that when he's like standing completely upright, he's really tall. And now that's not really what I'm concerned about so much as to when he's in an active stance, ready to make a save, or when he goes down into a save selection such as the butterfly, the RVH, or even the VH. We want to see the goaltender's head stay within that 1 to 1.5 foot range and not exceed that window. So again, as you watch him through these videos or through this clip that we've included, you'll see that in his stance, in his butterfly, and even in the RVH, his vertical displacement really is quite minimal. Now, looking at some photos as well of Lance, in his stance, his head is right around the crossbar. Then he goes down into the butterfly, and yes, your head is probably going to move a little bit. Now that's to be somewhat expected. I mean, we can't keep it completely level the whole time, but he goes down into the butterfly, and his head is fairly stable vertically. And then, even in the RVH, which is probably something that surprises most goaltenders, we can keep our head within the window. Now we're gonna move on to another goaltender of ours, Micah, and he's a great goaltender, very dynamic in his play. However, something that he has struggled with a little bit is this idea of keeping his head in the window and minimizing that vertical displacement of his head. So you'll notice that he starts off in a stance on the post. Once he comes off the post, however, he kind of relaxes that stance and kind of lengthens his body. So he's standing up, almost as though he's just completely standing, no knee bend. Then when he goes down into the butterfly, his head moves probably about 1.5 feet at least or more. And on the first shot, he actually gets beat. And I would attribute part of that, although of course goaltending is dynamic, there's lots of things involved, to his displacement being too large. He's not keeping his head within those two parallel lines or keeping his head within the window. Now, as we look at some of the photos of him, we can see again his stance on the post is sort of a ready stance. Then again, coming off of the post is where he relaxes and gets to his highest peak for his head. Would be like the highest vertical position of his head. And as the shooter comes in, you see this a lot, even professional goaltenders, he kind of starts to crouch, or as the shooter, I should say, starts to pull the puck back. The shooter may not even be moving. He starts to kind of crouch in a lower and lower stance, and then he drops even further when he goes into the butterfly. Now, I included two shots, one which is a high shot and one which is a low shot. And then in the very bottom right, I showed the highest his head was and the lowest his head was. And I kind of tried to capture that image so that the net was about the same, size and about the same location. So, so you can see that there's a significant difference in the highest position and the lowest position. Now we go from side by side to just that photo of the extremes. You can really see it accentuates between, again, the highest high and the lowest position of his head. So why is that important? You might say, hey, that doesn't seem like a very big deal. But again, as goaltenders, milliseconds count for whether or not we're going to be successful at making that save. And not only that, but as we move significant distances vertically with our head or with our body, our eyes actually have to recalibrate. So think of it as I'm a math guy, a math teacher. If you think of it as all of these different variables that are going on with your vision. So it could be a horizontal variable, a vertical variable, focus, your eyes actually focusing on an object, different saccades, and visual attachment. We want to take out any variable that is unnecessary. So one easy variable to minimize is that vertical variable. Okay, so we can make this process as easy as possible for keeping a sound visual attachment to the puck. So in summary, as we're trying to kind of keep our videos a little bit more succinct, I have some key takeaways. Number one, the eyes have a neural connection with almost every region of the brain. Again, that makes it very important for us to understand the importance of vision training and also optimizing the functionality of our eyes. Number two, the brain is not good at multitasking. So if we have to be, if the eyes have to be adjusting for not only horizontal, but vertical, and even another thing I didn't mention is the depth, our depth management and how our eyes will have to focus in that way. We want to minimize how much multitasking the eyes and therefore the brain have to do. Okay, how do we do that? We minimize vertical and horizontal displacement. Again, the easiest way to describe that is keeping our head in the window, not only in our stance, but in our butterfly, RVH, and VH. And I should also mention, while moving horizontally, whether on your feet or on the ice. This all reduces cognitive load on the brain, and it can even better ensure body control. Because if our head's not moving a lot, obviously our body's going to be moving less, and we're able to control our movement, keep our body controlled, and optimize the likelihood of making the save. So that is my rundown on visual attachment, the visual and neural connection with the brain, and trying to make sure that we embrace this idea of staying in the window.
I love it. And we're just gonna continually break this down, Coach Spidey.
Yeah,
We're
and
just gonna.
I do want to sauce it over to Coach Butts because there's a couple topics I didn't cover that are going to segue perfectly into what Coach Butts has to share with you guys as well. So it'll be
You
fun to
bet.
see those connections.
You bet. And that's what I'm excited to jump into. And it's gonna be our concept of having healthy hips, and then also we're gonna be talking about having healthy edges. But primarily focusing on having healthy hips. And we see a lot of goalies nowadays on ice that I don't know if it's a lack of training. I don't know if maybe it's a lack of flexibility or hip durability. There's a lot of goaltenders that have um, locked up hips, or what we're going to see as very, very slouched or low stances that just provide a unreasonable center of gravity. So as we kind of flip through, I've got a video right here to start us off talking about healthy hips. This is one of our UMary goaltenders from a while back, now coaching, Aaron Nelson. Just probably one of the best, honestly, at one, keeping the head in the window while staying through this whole progression. You can see butterfly to feet, over to butterfly. His head is moving very slightly. But then also what I want you guys to see here, and we're going to come back and look at it in a bit, is his hip angle when we're talking about his hip angle when we're talking about stance from the side. So as we flip through, we have a side image here, and our goaltender on the left, this is Micah. After we did a bunch of work, you can see that Micah's hips are high. He's got a forward he's got his forward momentum going, and he's got a high center of gravity. So at any point in time, and we're looking at the goalie on the left again, he could just lift up a leg and push right or left. Simply just plant a foot and push. Whereas the goaltender on the right is thinking back, hips are more in a locked position. Goaltender is going to have to push the hips forward and kind of raise them up before he can even think about planting to push either right or left. So what we're looking at in this, and I can make these slides a little bit bigger here for you guys, is we're looking at minimizing as many steps as we can. In goaltending, we're always looking at how can we do this in one step as opposed to 2 or 3 steps. So as you can see here, you're the goalie on the left, and you've got that high center of gravity, and you got forward momentum. It's easy to move. And if you're the goalie on the right, you're in a more locked position. You're going to have to first come out of that sinking back, sitting on your heels position, to a more upright position, and then you're going to have to plant, which is 2 steps. But also what I'll add here is, if you're looking at Micah on the left, his head here is generally going to be close in his relative window as it is when he's standing up. And goalies, the more that you sink back when you go down into your butterfly, and as your hips get more unhealthy and more unhealthy, because this picture on the right isn't even one of the worst examples, but there are goaltenders that they'll sit on their heels, and your head will just sink down. And the further that your head sinks down, obviously the further it's coming out of the window. So that's where these two concepts collide in a way, to bring light to this topic. I'm going to move on to this next slide here, and you guys will see this hand up in the right, in the top left. And this is what we're looking at. This goaltender here, we've done a ton of work, and probably one of the most improved through our high school hockey program consulting. But this is at the very beginning of the season where our hips are just not where we want them to be, and there's a lot of micro adjustments. If you guys, we'll watch this a couple times through, you can see a lot of micro adjustments, and it starts from the stance on the feet, you guys. When your knees are straight and your hip angle is over exaggerated to the point where you're leaning forward with your hips and not with your knees, when you go down, that's when you sink back. You can see in this goaltender has to actually push his hips forward and then plant a leg in order to move. And it's especially right here on this rep. Comes out, Second save is down, adjust hips, and then has to go. And we just want to minimize steps and make it as simple as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to this video of Aaron, and we're going to look at how every time he goes in the butterfly, he's going forwards. He's actually gaining depth when he's going down. He's got this slight forward release, which we'll probably talk about in a future video. But you can see that he's got his knees bent, his chest up over top of the play. So he's got great head trajectory, which if you haven't seen our most recent video, Tendy Talk, from 2 Fridays ago, definitely go check that out. We talk about head trajectory, and it kind of brings this together with box control. But this is one of the greatest examples right here of healthy hips and keeping your head in the window all the way through this play.
And we got the old beekeeper mask going on.
Yeah.
Too. That's pretty sweet.
We love the beekeeper for tracking. Just adds an extra dimension to the training. Great. This rep here, see his head is right at the crossbar? Pretty much all the way through. The window is about a foot by a foot. I like it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Then we talk about healthy edges. And having crisp, healthy edges, guys, has nothing to do really with equipment. We have a most recent video that we put out about equipment is about purchasing the right skates. And the biggest thing you guys got to do when you purchase the right skates is make sure, well, first off, when you have your skates, make sure you have enough steel on them. And that's what's going to help you skate. It's really not the skates themselves. So how you use them. And we're looking at this goalie here. We've done a ton of work. This is Caden. We've done a ton of work on healthy edges. And this is the outcome to working on many edges as we can. And guys, it really just comes down to being as level on your edges as possible and then hooking an inside edge only when you make that point where you stop. So you'll see that goaltender is going to have flat edges all the way through until he actually stops, and it's just going to be a quick inside edge and then reset. When we don't have healthy edges, we see what people like to say as a bender. But what happens is, this is one of these first videos that happens, and it's just the reality of it, guys. When you're working through something, you're going to fail. You're going to have some embarrassing moments. But when you lock on your inside edges and you can't physically reset, that's when we fall down. We get stuck where we are. And so we've watched that on repeat enough. This is our work in progress right here. You can see his edges right here is great. But then at the very beginning, he sets his feet and he has to reset every time before he moves. We want to get to where we're going, and we want to be able to seamlessly reset our feet. So there's some great examples in here, and also there's some resets that he has to do, like right there is a reset, but then here we're set. And if you guys can get to where you want to go and have your feet set when you get there and not have to reset your feet, you're going to be moving up without your house, without the crease, just so much smoother.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I would just mention, in general, the theme that we can see woven between all of these concepts is the idea of being efficient and not having to make additional adjustments, whether it's from your stance to the butterfly, or whether it's from locking in, bending that ankle and then having to straighten that ankle to move again, or whether it's your hip angle from your stance to your butterfly. Anytime you can eliminate extra steps, you're going to be a more efficient goaltender.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this video right here is showing us. This here was one of our just great days with program consulting with Century High School, and what we got is we got a goaltender here that just has some seamless reps on fire. Casey makes saves, and we're just flying right through. And what you guys are looking at, you're looking at the window. So it's our first concept, and you're looking at his hips and how his hips keep him in the window, because his hips are the exact same angle. He's got the same hip angle from his chest all the way through his hips, and he keeps his knees bent. So as you watch it one more time, going all the way through, head staying right underneath that crossbar, and he's tracking pucks all the way in. And the reason why he's simply able to track those pucks is because he's not recalculating. His head's in the window. He's on that puck the whole time. This is a great example of hips right here, and also a great drill to help you to work on having healthier edges and healthier hips. Trying to find my cursor. There we go. Another fantastic drill. Let's go. Manitoba Mayhem. Thanks for the sub. So this here is a fantastic clip. This is also a great drill for you guys to work on this hips in your butterfly. This is Ryan. He's one of our goaltenders that's just excelled in butterfly movement. And we love to shout out our goalies, by the way. So we got tons of clips of our goalies. We search through and we find this stuff, and it's fun to be able to shout them out. So as you can see, his head is staying in that window. It's not moving up and down. He's staying fluent all the way through. He's engaging his eyes right when he turns right here. His eyes are already on that next puck that he's going to stop. And his hips are staying at that same angle. His hips aren't going up and down. Really, you could say his hips are staying in that window too if we created a window for your hips. So everything's right there. He's got that perfect center of gravity, and he's able to just fluently move around his house, make the saves. And then this final drill here is this is a Gatling gun. This is a common drill just around the goaltending globe. But this one here I threw this one in because I wanted you guys to have an example of something you could do to work on a little bit outside the box. It's a crazy drill, and it's definitely difficult, especially when the shooters shoot a little bit early. But what it does is it helps you to keep those edges nice and flat. And if you have unhealthy hips here, it's going to be really difficult to recover and go into that next rep. So I really like this drill for keeping your edges nice and healthy, nice and flat. And it's also great to keep your head in the window, because here we see our goalie kind of gets low and he gets scored on blocker. But then he's got his head in the window and he's tracking pucks right in. And it's a quick shot. Right when that goaltender gets square to the puck, shot's coming in. It's a great example.
Absolutely.
So yeah, Coach, if you got anything to add, I'll pull us back in here. If you got anything to add, I definitely want to open it up and see what you got to add. And then I want to give everyone in the chat an option to send in those questions. We'd love to answer a couple of questions here live for you guys. So we'll give you a shout to ask some questions.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add is a lot of goaltenders will ask the question, well, what is the best hip angle for me? So I'm able to keep, stay in the window, have healthy hips, healthy edges. What is the best hip angle for me? And I think what you want to use as a litmus for that is that when you're standing your stance on your feet versus when you're in your butterfly, your hip angle should be relatively the same. So perhaps you start with your butterfly, because that's what you're going to make a lot of your saves in. Start with the butterfly and take a mental kind of note of what your hip angle is in the butterfly, and then pop up to your feet and see what kind of a stance allows you to minimize the vertical displacement of your head and also allows you to keep a similar hip angle to your butterfly. You could do the opposite if you want to. You could start in your stance. What's a really good stance that you feel comfortable in right before you take a shot? Then pop down in your butterfly and see if you can achieve the same hip angle there.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And that's where I would just put another plug in for that. The most recent Tendy Talk video, we broke down a lot of stuff with hip angles and finding that perfect squareness for your stance. And if you guys want to know more about that, we have some great images of goalies from the side, and where we draw lines and look at their angles and keeping that healthy stance all the way through from standing on your feet, because we want to be on our feet as much as we can. And then when we do have to release into the butterfly, we want to keep that healthy angle with a high center of gravity and forward. I can't say it enough.
Right.
Forward momentum in our movements, because even if you're moving forward that slight amount, like we saw with Aaron, you're able to pick up a leg and change directions really fast.
Yeah, and two, just in general, it's always fun as goalies. It's fun to add to our repertoire of skills. But another art is actually how do you minimize or simplify your game? And really, that is, how do you take out any non-essential steps, even at micro movements, as you're transitioning and moving within the net. So it's really fun to do, and it's certainly a lifelong journey and kind of evolution of goaltending, but also the evolution and the development of every single goalie's individual game.
Yeah, I like that too, because that's all just video analysis breakdown. Anytime you're on the ice for practice, you can just make sure that somebody is filming you, or you got your camera on a tripod. Maybe it's your phone out there at open hockey or something, next time you're able to stop on ice, it's as simple as just filming yourself doing a 5-minute drill and breaking it down into slow motion and seeing what some of those extra movements are that you do.
Absolutely. And we're happy to help you with that video analysis too if you find yourself overwhelmed or want another perspective.
Yeah, for sure. That's when you head over to Goalrobber.com and send us a message. For sure. Find us on Facebook as well. But yeah, we don't unfortunately we don't have any questions down in the chat as of right now. But
Yeah, and
for
if it's not right now too, attendees,
exactly.
feel free to comment on the video later on, and we'll do our best to answer your questions and interact with you as well.
Yeah, exactly. Anytime you post in those comments, we'll definitely comment back to you guys. And if for some reason it's not a simple comment back to you guys, we'll just make a video about it and then we'll post it on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thanks for tuning in today, goalies. We appreciate it. And as always, stay healthy and tune in next time.
All right, we'll see you guys later. Thanks.